Hitler's name is one of the most terrifying in Jewish history. It was during Hitler's time that the Jewish people suffered enormously and came to the very brink of extinction. Hitler's policies were fundamentally anti-Semitic in nature. Initially, Jews were stripped of their rights, but this policy soon led to their physical annihilation. The question arises, why did Hitler hate Jews so much? That is what we will discuss in this piece. The first reason is the general atmosphere of intolerance toward Jews in Germany and in Europe as a whole at that time. One should not think that Hitler invented anti-Semitism. Hatred of Jews has its roots in ancient times, going back to the crucifixion of Christ, and by the early 20th century, it was widespread among the European population. Consider the Jewish pogroms in the Russian Empire at the start of the 20th century, which the authorities turned a blind eye to. As for Germany and its population, as early as the 19th century, numerous nationalist and pan-German movements arose in Germany and Austria that had a distinctly anti-Semitic character and considered Jews to be enemies. Many myths surrounded Jewry, such as the claim that they performed ritual murders of Christian children. The Folkish movement, which emerged in the late 19th century, called Jews a foreign race and supported their persecution. The well-known ideologue Georg von Schonerer, himself a fervent anti-Semite, had a serious influence on Hitler and his views. All in all, the atmosphere in Europe, even in the 1930s, was quite hostile toward Jews, and the curtailment of their rights after Hitler's rise to power did not particularly trouble many European governments, which were relatively tolerant of Hitler right up until the start of World War II. This is precisely why Hitler's anti-Semitic rhetoric worked so effectively on the German public. Hitler merely reinforced the belief that Jews were enemies, responsible for all their misfortunes. This framework explained everything simply and clearly, pointing to a single enemy. The second reason is the so-called stab in the back myth. The concept of the stab in the back was popular in German society at the time and was actively promoted by Hitler. What did it claim? Many Germans believed that Germany lost World War I solely because of internal traitors who undermined the army and then surrendered to the Entente powers. This conspiracy theory blamed communists, social democrats, and above all Jews for the defeat. Its adherents believed that had it not been for these internal traitors, Germany could have won the war. The German army in 1918 was still capable of fighting, and the theory gained additional traction from the fact that Germany signed the armistice, even though no Entente soldier had crossed the German border, which naturally raised many questions. The concept became popular among nationalists, conservatives, and most importantly, among military circles. Hitler himself sincerely believed this narrative and placed the blame on Jewish traitors, for whom the Kaiser's regime and Germany as a whole were supposedly alien. The third reason is Hitler's deep fondness for conspiracy theories directed against Jews. Hitler was an enthusiast of various conspiracy theories and, beyond the stab in the back, believed in others as well. For instance, he believed in the protocols of the Elders of Zion and in the idea that Jews were plotting world domination. He believed in their malicious intentions toward European nations, that Jews wanted to destroy them, and he believed in a world Jewish government, and so on. Again, all of these theories were quite widespread and popular among ordinary Germans, which is why Hitler frequently used them in his rhetoric and, most importantly, genuinely believed them himself. The fourth reason is communism. Hitler regarded communism as hostile to the German people, since it was founded on cosmopolitanism and a rejection of nationalism. In this, he saw a threat to the existence of the German nation and race. German communists, true to form, were quite radical in their opposition to Kaiserian Germany and the old order, which they sought to destroy by any means. During the Russian Revolution, there were even attempts to establish socialist republics on German soil. For a brief time, the Bavarian Soviet Republic and the Bremen Soviet Republic came into existence. As a result, all communists were viewed as enemies of Germany trying to destroy it, which was at least partly consistent with the communist concept of world revolution. Hitler was also profoundly influenced by events in Russia, where the Bolsheviks had seized power and were implementing their ideology in practice. In Soviet Russia, Hitler always saw the primary enemy of German National Socialism, and long before coming to power, he repeatedly vowed to crush Bolshevik rule. But we were speaking about Jews. So what is the connection between communists and Jews? Hitler held the prejudice that they were essentially synonymous, since Jews, in his view, stood at the helm of communism. Once again, this belief did not emerge from nothing. Indeed, there were many Jews among communist leaders, and even the founder of the ideology, Karl Marx, was Jewish. At the same time, there were many ethnic Germans among German communists. Even the leader of the Communist Party of Germany, Ernst Thälmann, who ran against Hitler in elections, came from an ordinary German family. Hitler's belief that all communists were Jews was therefore false, even if not entirely without some basis. The fifth reason involves racial theories, which also formed a cornerstone of Hitler's Nazism. Racial science became popular in Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It claimed that there were many races and that they were not equal, and that interbreeding between races led to degeneration. Hitler was thoroughly imbued with this idea and made it the foundation of his party. Interestingly, there were quite a number of different racial theories, in some of which Jews were classified as part of the white race. However, the racial theory of Hans F. K. Gunther formed the basis of Hitler's own vision on this matter. It centered on the concept of 6 European sub-races considered superior, headed by the Nordics, that is, the Aryans. All others were deemed inferior and subject to elimination. The superior races were held to surpass all others in intellect, attitude toward work, physical capability, and so forth. Mixing between superior and inferior races was forbidden, as it was said to lead to the degeneration of the people. As one might expect, Jews were classified among the inferior races slated for elimination. It is worth noting that racial theory significantly radicalized anti-Semitism. Previously, Jews could escape persecution simply by converting to Christianity, after which they were no longer considered Jews. With the advent of racial theory, anti-Semitism took on a physiological character from which a Jew simply could not escape. And it was precisely this concept that gave rise to the idea of eliminating Jews as a people. After coming to power, Hitler introduced the racial laws in 1935, which stripped Jews of citizenship and restricted them in various rights, including the right to practice certain professions. Simultaneously, a process of so-called Aryanization took place, whereby Jewish property was confiscated in favor of Aryans, thus depriving Jews of their businesses and means of livelihood. All of this ultimately culminated in the approval, at the start of the war, of the plan for the final solution to the Jewish question, which called for the physical extermination of Jews. In conclusion, one can say that Hitler's hatred of Jews arose primarily from a combination of misconceptions, prejudices, and conspiracy theories that were prevalent among the German people of the time. Traditional German anti-Semitism merged with racial theories and degenerated into the most extreme form of anti-Semitism in history, one that led to the murder of 6 million Jews during World War II.